Here's recording. Now we open up our other presentation. Can you see the presentation okay? Yep, all right, great. So welcome again. This our topic tonight is building an email list with WordPress and Mailchimp. And when Peter and I were talking about this topic, we know that I think at first I was going to call it something very broad, like email marketing, and we said let's narrow it a bit because that could, again, there's so much to it. But what we're going to try to cover here today is really more, I think, practical advice and tie it into WordPress. So I'm going to cover, I'll show you the agenda in a second, but we're going to try to split the two. So it's going to be partly Mailchimp side and partly WordPress side. So we'll do some quick introductions between Peter and myself, and then we'll talk a little bit just about in general, what is a email list and what is email marketing? Kind of why is it important? Why should you care? I'll give an overview of Mailchimp itself. And even though I'm talking Mailchimp, if you're using another email marketing platform like Constant Contact, for example, a lot of the same things should apply. They just may call things slightly different terms. And then we're going to get into some demos. So Peter's going to show how to set up a form on your website and integrate that with WordPress. I'm sorry, integrate Mailchimp and WordPress through a form on your website. And then I'm going to show really one use case, because there's a lot of different things you can do in Mailchimp. I'm probably going to show one that I think is probably of most interest to folks here, which is how to automate blog posts from your website. So we'll take a look at what you have to do on your website, what you'll be doing in Mailchimp, and I'll do a quick demo on that. Then we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts and tips. All right, so about me, if you're new, welcome again. I'm Ray. I'm one of the co-organizers of the Hartford WordPress group. I've been in IT for about 25 plus years as a developer / software architect. Worked for large corporations previously in my career. Been on my own as a small business owner for about 3 years-ish or so, but I've been using WordPress for 4+ years. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids, one crazy cat who will hopefully be quiet tonight, and I am a geek. Peter?
I'm Peter Ingersoll. I live in South Windsor. I grew up in Newington. I've been using WordPress for about, I still can't remember exactly, 8 to 10 years. And I've always been the person that was in a marketing way using technology to solve marketing problems. And then when I discovered WordPress, it was a great tool and something I've really decided to focus on. And mainly as an implementer and somebody who uses a tool versus a hardcore coder. Yeah, it is definitely an area of focus for me.
All right, so let's talk a bit. Peter, you'll probably lead this.
I'll lead on that, sure.
I'll jump in as well. So
yeah. So we're putting this presentation together, and as Ray mentioned, this could be an 8-hour seminar. This could be, we can get into all kinds of levels of detail, and we can only touch on so much during this presentation. So that's why, looking at email lists and email marketing, this is a very brief overview. And I think what will help is if, again, there are certain questions, because I might, or Ray might cover something that you're not interested in, but we might miss something that you are, because there is so much. But let's make sure in some regards that we're kind of on the same page about what we're talking about with email lists, email marketing, and why it's important. If you're trying to reach a target market audience. So Ray, if you go to the next slide. So when we're talking about email marketing, there's certain components of this, and we put in the word opt-in here to make sure that it's understood that this is different than the email marketing that is ultimately spamming. We're not talking about spamming. In fact, spamming is bad. It's just very, very bad. So when we're talking about email marketing, digital marketing, using Mailchimp as a tool, it's all about the opt-in side, and it's about gathering and managing the email addresses that you can use for marketing and outreach. Now, you may be initially a smaller business who just starting out, but any opportunity to start building that list is something that you should do. I'll mention this probably a few times, but when you talk to a lot of digital marketers and all, a lot of them say that, you know, one of their regrets is not starting this earlier. The idea of gathering, you know, more leads and people that want, so when they're ready to do something or take whatever they're doing to the next level, whether it's, you know, blogging, promoting a book, selling courses online and on up the scale. But to reach people and target people, that's what we're talking about in gathering on the email marketing. This idea of customers and prospects opting and subscribing, they want to get your information and they want to get it because you're providing valuable information. In email marketing, if you're doing it right, you're delivering, you know, what you promised in a targeted message to your market, because they're trusting you with their email address. And people, and we all opt into email lists, I imagine, at some point or another, and we opt out when something becomes less useful. But putting tools in place that help us manage those lists and help us with the automation of the whole list gathering, email subscribers, letting people manage their own accounts, and then having this tool that also allows things to be tracked and analyzed. So you could see, you know, hey, I put a post, I sent something through email and nobody was interested in this one, but I sent this other message out and a lot of people were interested and clicked through. And having tools that allow you to do that, this is all part of the getting the email, delivering a useful message, seeing how people react and reacting to it, and building from there. Next slide, Ray. So why is email marketing valuable? Why are people saying, you know, my last line here, online marketers agree your email list is your most valuable asset. It is your list of customers or readers, you know, that you own. There are a lot of digital marketing activities out there that, quite honestly, you know, we're kind of at the mercy of, you know, for example, how Facebook or any of the social media might use our content. But your email list and the messages that you send through that is what is yours. So that's important. You know, it's even, you know, you might get aggregate information, or if you get click-throughs on things that you might do in a Google ad or a Facebook ad, if you're at a level where you're doing advertising, you know, you can own those people, but the overall audience that you reach, you won't know those until they actually engage and you get them on your email list. Email is the #1 direct communication channel in terms of, you know, how to reach people directly, especially with targeted messages. Does it convert? It converts quite well in terms of an ROI. It's inexpensive to do ultimately, but when you're doing it right, you know, and I've got customers where, you know, the right email at the right time and sales get generated that are significant. So it has some great conversion. Ray, do you have any?
Well, if I could throw in, I think one of the reasons why, at least in my observation from what I've read too, is because it goes back to what Peter was previously saying, which is it's a trust transaction. So
Yeah.
you think about advertising, you know, some of the worst advertising in the world is what they call like interruption advertising. So, you know, you're on Facebook or you're watching TV and that commercial jumps up and you're like, I just want to get to the next, you know, I want to get to whatever the next part of my show is. That's that really, you know, annoying advertising. Email marketing in a lot of ways is the person is giving you, they've opted in. They've said, yeah, I find what you're giving me valuable. So when something comes from you, again, if it's of value, you're more likely to get people who actually look at it. I mean, you don't get that in other types of advertising. I think that's one of the key reasons why it converts quite well.
Yeah, I subscribe to certain email lists that I really actually look forward to those emails. You know, when I see them, I'm clicking on them and I'm reading because I know these particular people or organizations, and a lot of the things that I tend to be attracted to ends up being, you know, the authentic. I know the person behind the business, the messaging, and it's always super helpful. And you know, that's great when you have that. You know, I'm also on lists, you know, because a major retailer, you know, gave me a coupon or signed up for our list for your 20% off, and I literally get emails from them every single day, if not more often. And I've recently been going through and just deleting those, Michael's and just on and on. I can go down the list of all the ones where it's just like, y'all overdoing it. So yeah, treating your list very carefully and respecting that list, just like your people are trusting, as we said, is really important. And when as you build this, it grows as your business grows. Like I mentioned a little while ago, starting off small and just saying, hey, we've got a new blog post if you're interested. But at some point, you may actually be saying, thank you for being a reader. We have a new venture and we want to let you know about it. And if you've gained that trust, then your message will be that much more well received. We were just talking about the Page Builder Summit, and Nathan Wrigley, who has great content and also great emails and offers deals and things like that, people knew that when he was putting something together, it was going to be good because Nathan is a good guy who does really valuable things. So it becomes quite valuable. And just a few years ago, he was just another, he was a WordPress developer. So it's interesting how this can grow. Next slide. So when we're talking about gathering emails and list management, there's in some way, shape, or form, a database needs to be behind this. You're gathering an email address and you're putting it somewhere digitally. So that could be done either through WordPress, because WordPress uses a database on the end, or through a service provider, which is Mailchimp. And there's a number of others we can kind of talk about what some of the options are later if it's important, if it's helpful. But this idea that as you're gathering and managing, that sits in a database, and all the things that happen with that address, including people being able to opt out, it's a data-driven thing. For the people to subscribe and opt in or out, there's a lot of ways of doing that. And this idea of joining a list form, right? So join our mailing list, pop-ups and landing pages, all these different ways where somebody has a form that they can then give their name, email address, and then potentially other information that you want to start gathering. A lot of times, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a few times too, about what do you ask for when you're getting people to subscribe. A lot of times it's a minimum list, right? So you're not asking for every last people. I've seen companies try to ask for every last thing on hey, I want to join your subscription list, and guess what? The conversion of that is poor. If it's just, here's my first name and my email address, that type of thing is something that people are willing to do. Advanced list management, depending on the provider. So this idea of if you're just saving something to WordPress and you're sending out your latest blog post, well, that gives you one level of management. But when you use a tool like Mailchimp, you get into a greater level of list management, segmentation, the analysis, really being able to track, who's responding to what, who your best readers are, and all. And one piece of advice as we're talking about this database is keep a copy local, whether it's on whether it's on WordPress or some other tool. Again, that is your list. You want to make sure that you protect that, and knowing that it is a piece of data that can be extracted or pulled out is an important thing to consider. So while I was thinking about the database part of it, that was a little tip I want to make sure that everybody kind of keeps in mind if and when you get to that point.
And that's also valuable too, just in terms of providers themselves too. The nice thing with a lot of these email lists is that you can extract them just as an Excel file or a CSV file. So if you decide someday you don't like Mailchimp, or they do something you don't like, it's quite easy. Unlike sometimes, we're moving a WordPress site from one theme to another, it can be a nightmare. Usually these mailing lists, they're not that bad. There are things you'll lose, like your templates and that kind of stuff, but you're right, your audience list, that I totally agree, keep that local.
Yeah, that's a great point about the fact that, again, your list, if a lot of people jump ship from Mailchimp I don't know how many months ago or a year ago, because they changed a few things. Recently, their interfaces have changed, but even how you manage an audience and what counts in the free account and so on. So some people were like, I don't like Mailchimp anymore. They extracted their list and they found a different provider. So yeah, it's important too when selecting, and I think we've got a slide on some of the things to consider. And I don't think I put that one in there. We didn't put that one in there about being able to extract the data. But most of these, it's a pretty straightforward thing. So kind of touching on what we already mentioned about, readers should have a reason to subscribe. So this whole idea of, how do you build an email list? Well, you give a reason for people to want to join your email list. And then you make it easy for them to join your email list, and then you deliver on that email list. But for this idea, if you can start with your blog readers and existing customers and just send updates. I've got one client that doesn't get a whole lot of signups, but with their customer list, they're able to reach out to people, and we watched, how many people unsubscribe, opt out of that list, and a lot of people stayed on because they're relatively infrequent, they're helpful, that type of thing, but it was their existing customer list. Blog readers, it's, and I think, Ray, you're going to talk about this a little bit more, about this idea of just making it easier to get what you're putting together to your audience. And then, moving to the fact that, retailers can deliver new product info and offers. Again, stuff that's helpful and useful, might be something, when you're first starting out with the products that you have, whether it's your what you're writing or what you're selling. But then you get into things like when people, when companies are looking to do a little bit more, like I said, something that's big is this idea of developing your own course and selling a course online. Well, you want to reach a lot of people, and you want to nurture that list of people and grow that list of people. And you do that through a number of things. Lead magnets are something, a word you might see, where it's that thing that gets somebody to go, yes, I will give you my email address and all, because I want that thing that you're offering, which might be, depending on who and what type of company you are, ebook, white paper, webinar. Courses, a lot of times they'll do an overview of the course, and then it's like buy into the full course. Free trials, coupons, all things that I'm sure you've all experienced with when you go to a website and you see a forum and it says, please subscribe. And if there's something that's compelling, that would be the lead magnets that we're talking about. And then just promoting, through making sure you mention, through your blog posts, having effective call to actions, using social media, and having, in all of these types of things, I think this is very important, continuity between things. So if you have a blog post that's about a particular topic, and maybe you have a specific call to action that relates, hey, you learn more about the thing I just talked about by joining our email list, that has some continuity. But or if you're going to link something from social media, having it have meaning and continuity through where you're sending them to get to your form, to get to your landing page. A page that talks about the thing that then again ultimately is trying to get that email address, so you have it. It's something to really think about. Ray, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the other one, that's really net. I know we're talking about doing a whole thing about nonprofits, but where I see email lists being extremely effective is for nonprofits. And a lot of times it's just giving updates on what they're doing. So, I work with a cat shelter, for example, and once a month they send out their newsletter, and it's, what's going on in the shelter. They'll have a story about, one of the cats that's up for adoption. So it's one of those things like, they're not blatantly calling out for donations. There's a donate call to action at the end, but it's more of, if you have donated, it's people want to know, where's my money going? Like what's happening with it? So just keeping people up to date on that is extremely effective. So one of the first things I do when I talk to a nonprofit is say, so do you have an email list? If you don't, why don't you? It's usually it's a time thing, but to me, it's so critical to, to show people what you're doing. They may not think it's something people want to read about, but they do, because you're donating to your cause.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I work working with nonprofits also, and that communicating exactly what you said, communicating where the money is going, how it's being used, and encouraging, big part of nonprofits when they're looking for, the donations is making sure that everybody understands the value that they bring. And this is a great way to communicate that. And then even solicit, either more donations or come to an event, right? So, they're throwing in an event, a fundraiser, a lot of things where we're communicating out to a community who benefits from some of the things that the organization is doing. Well, this is a mechanism for emails and mechanism for helping people, know that those things are going on. Real quick, if you're doing email list building and promotion, having people have a reason to stay subscribed is so very important. I think I've already talked about this a couple of times, but that idea of, sending valuable information. So when you do send it, make it valuable. Consistency is important. However you define consistency. So it basically, one of the bigger problems is people were building the list and then they don't send anything out and somebody completely forgets that they're on a list. But it doesn't also mean that you have to send something every week if the content that you're developing is not I need to send something out every week kind of thing. But some level of consistency, and that consistency includes, the tone that is the method and the of how you're communicating. Authenticity is very important for that. So, I know when I'm reading certain emails from people, I can even tell some just by what's in the email who it's coming from. One guy is asking, hey, I'm sitting here Sunday on my deck drinking this kind of tea. What kind of tea are you drinking? That's how he writes his emails, kind of thing. But it's because he's an authentic guy and that's how he connects to his audience also, by the way, when he does podcasts and when he writes his blog posts and things like that. Once again, subscribers are trusting you. Don't spam, abuse, sell your list. We put these things on our list saying that we're not going to do that. It may seem incredibly obvious, but that's because we're not the types of organizations that would do that. I assume, but it happens, and we've seen it from the hey, they're abusing this list, or they're doing things that I'm not liking. I'm unsubscribing. I'm out of here. I'm even reporting them. That's a big thing in Mailchimp. If you get emails that you don't like, and Mailchimp is keeping track of, how many unsubscribes and why you're unsubscribing and things like that, because as an organization, their whole thing is making sure that they can deliver those emails, and they manage that by making sure that their customers are following the rules. And then, this idea of the note again, many types of email campaigns, and use what's best for you and your brand, and then measure the results and adjust to it. That's kind of a marketing message. Ways of sending emails, methods and services. So obviously we're talking specifically from the WordPress perspective. One way to send emails from a list is using WordPress itself to generate emails through the WordPress server. That can work. It can be iffy. There's a lot of things that can get in the way of deliverability. But that's one way. You would never want to deal with large lists, but if you're dealing with smaller lists, there are ways that you can use WordPress itself. WordPress can also generate emails that can be sent through an email service through SMTP, which is the email protocol, or through an API, which is a way of connecting your site to a service. And that could be your own email company, Gmail. AWS SES is Amazon Web Services simple email system, which is a way that you can send lots of emails for pennies. Same thing with Mailgun, SendGrid. These are all services out there that can take emails from something and send out on your behalf, based on on setting those up. And along with that are going into a higher level of marketing is the email marketing software as a service, SaaS, those providers, which include Mailchimp, and then others that are like Mailchimp. Sendinblue is one that I've just discovered. Ray, do you know Sendinblue at all?
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
Yeah, so they're considered a Mailchimp competitor right now. MailerLite, ConvertKit. I put these down because these are the ones that offer pretty good free levels. And one of the things kind of focus going forward is on the keep it free first, especially for the folks that I know are in our group that aren't necessarily jumping right into the premium of everything. But these are some services that offer for free. So then on the next slide, what to consider when picking one of those things. Deliverability is huge. If you send out emails and there's something about that company that the internet doesn't like, and you can have servers get blacklisted for sending out spam, right? So that's why Mailchimp, for example, is so strict on making sure that you are delivering to people who want your emails. So deliverability is very, very important. The terms of service and looking at it, Ray, I think you touched on that a little bit. What can and can't you do through one of these providers? There are limitations based on not only the number of people in terms of, how many in a free account and a paid account and all, but also, what products you're selling, or, if you're trying to do multi-level marketing, a lot of them will not, you'll be breaking terms of service, or cannabis products, or any number of things that are in the terms of service. So you have to know those things. Making sure that there is built-in list management and opting out to do that on your behalf. That's why we like tools like Mailchimp. What kind of design tools are there? And do you want to create like rich HTML emails or just plain text? And the pros and cons of each. And a lot of that depends also on who you're trying to reach. There are businesses that are sending highly designed emails using HTML, and many in their audience, all the images are blocked and all the design is blocked. So people are getting poorly formatted emails, and sometimes those plain text emails are much better for you. The overall professionalism of that organization that you're working in, does it match what you're doing? I think a lot have improved, but there were some services that basically got old looking. Their emails were clearly dated. So just an overall, does it reflect your organization, or you personally? The ease of use, and that's why it's great that there are these trials, so you can try it. Mailchimp has gotten harder to use, in my opinion, because they're adding a lot of other services. And now I went into it today and I was like, I don't know where some of these things are, and you'll probably see me fumble with that in a little bit. And then again, the number of subscribers and the cost for those, how many emails you can send to how many people, how many people can you have in your database, and so on, are all factors in deciding. Right? Anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's a good good segue into Mailchimp itself, because I think it has a lot of those features that Peter was just talking about in terms of being a good candidate. So it's a third-party piece of software, very popular. It seems like it really blew up in the past year or two. They started advertising quite heavily. I think that was a big part of it. Also, if you listen to podcasts, they were everywhere. They had some clever commercials. They have the awesome looking icon of the chimp with the mail hat. I mean, who doesn't like that thing? And they're really great for starting off. I do agree, though, that as Peter said, that it's gotten a bit more bloated. So they've expanded a lot. Like now there's a whole feature in there we won't talk about today, but you basically don't even need a website anymore. Like just for getting started with Mailchimp. Now all of us WordPress people react with horror and say, no, what do you mean? I need a website. But for certain customers, just getting started very quickly. For some people, that's all you need. Again, all the cons of that is vendor lock-in. So What we'll be talking about today, though, is just the one strict use case of Mailchimp for email lists. Although just be aware, it does a lot more than just email marketing. So one of the things I like about it is for small businesses, small nonprofits, it is free, up to 2,000 contacts. And then afterwards, some people's complaint is the cost goes up a bit. I mean, it goes up to $10 a month for 50,000 contacts. For many small businesses and small nonprofits, the free plan is good enough for quite a while. So, you can't beat the price. I don't know, compared to the other ones, Constant Contact, et cetera. I think they all have similar kinds of tiers. But for just playing around with, it can't be beat, for at least the free plan. So some terms, as I said, even though these terms are Mailchimp specific, the concepts apply. I've worked with Constant Contact. They may call something slightly different, but the concepts apply across different email marketing platforms. So the first one to understand is the concept of an audience. So an audience are basically your subscribers. So as Peter said, these are the people who've opted in to be part of your mailing list. And you can start out, you don't have to start out from scratch too. That's the nice thing. You can import a list of customers, clients, donors, whatever. Mailchimp makes it pretty easy too. They give you a simple template you can download and format it like into an Excel spreadsheet or something. Put your data in it and just import it in. You really want to be sure though that these are people who know who you are. Because one of the key things is when you import it, and as Peter said, they're pretty strict about their terms of use. So you don't want to have a bunch of people solely reporting you as spam because your account can get deactivated. So this goes back to have a local copy of your account if something ever happens. This is one of the things I tell customers too. I'm doing my Facebook presentation tomorrow. When you rely on a third party for a service like this, just remember they own the service. You don't. I mean, you're paying money to use their service, but their terms of use, you really need to understand what you're getting into. The other thing is, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you on that one?
Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough when working with people or talking to people and they have their entire business on Facebook and they don't have their own website and all, and just saying you are at the mercy of what Facebook decides to do from day to day. And there's examples of where things have changed, where people, businesses have gone under. So I think that's have to really think about a lot of these things and what you do and don't have control over. So yeah, Facebook is a great place, but no,
And this sort of almost sounds counter to like one of the pros we said of an email list is it's a thing that you own.
Yeah.
Just make sure you own it. So again, have that list, have your audience list separate so that if you ever need to rebuild it, it's or move someplace else, you can do it. So part of that is, I think that just, you import the list. Some people forget about that and they just go on sending emails, signing people up. You really want to manage your list going forward. Because as I said, Mailchimp, if you're on the free account too, you only have 2,000 subscribers, but Mailchimp is very good. We won't have a lot of time today to look into this, but they're very good at telling you how engaged your subscribers are. So, let's say you have 400 people on your email list who never open up your emails, so they open them up once a year. You may want to do a bit of a house cleaning and remove those people because that'll free up 400 more slots so you can get 400 more people on the free plan. So, keep a lookout for that. You can tell on a subscriber or an audience basis, who's active, who's inactive. Another thing for, again, making sure of terms of use that you're not spamming people, you can set up a double opt-in for this. So if you ever subscribe to an email list where they'll send you something afterwards saying, please confirm that you really wanted to subscribe. There's two schools of thought of that. One is, yes, you are, ensuring that people are really interested in subscribing, but you also run the risk if somebody doesn't get that opt-in message, goes to spam, they have second thoughts, they forget about it. So you may lose people that way. But if you're very concerned about, not spamming people, making sure that you want everyone's consent when they sign in, you can turn on double opt-in at the audience level. So audience is kind of the first important term to understand. The other one is, jumped too far ahead. Segmentation. So this took me a little while too. When I first started building email lists in Mailchimp, my first thought was, oh, we're gonna have a list for these customers, a list for these customers, a list for this type of person, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking in my head that these are all kind of separate lists. Well, they're not. You know, in Mailchimp, it's a single audience that you have. So all your subscribers are in a single audience. What you want to do, though, is you do want the ability to segment that audience. And there's a couple ways you can do that in Mailchimp. One is, probably the simplest one is tags. So you can, just like in WordPress, you know, you can create a tag for your posts, call it whatever you want. You know, you can do the same thing for an audience. So for example, one of the nonprofits I work with, they have tags for people who are, you know, active member, or a tag for somebody who wants to receive their bulletin in a PDF versus a print copy, et cetera, et cetera. Just, you have so many uses of these different kinds of tags. And what that lets you do then is later when you're sending out your email list, you can segment it based on tags. So tags are all within your control. You can create as many of those things as you like, and people can have multiple tags assigned to them. A segment is similar, but a segment is something that you can also use built into Mailchimp based on some criteria. So for example, location is a good one. So if you've gathered a person's address, you can use that as a segment. So you don't need to create a tag for that. You can segment based on an address. You can also segment based on activity too. So as I said, your more frequent or your more active subscribers can be their own segment, or less active ones. You know, you can do it that way as well. So, and you can use a tag as a segment too. So it gets a little confusing. Think of tags as stuff within your control. You can create as many of these things as you like. Segments are, you can use built-in attributes of an audience member as well as your tags. So third term is campaign. So now you've got an audience. What do you do with them? Well, they broadly use this term called campaign. So this is the Mailchimp definition. So what's a campaign? It's any distributed content that's created and measured in Mailchimp. So that includes emails, automations, and this is where things get big. You know, you can create ads in Mailchimp. We won't go there. Landing pages. So a campaign is just, think of it as like a marketing campaign. And what you do is either something you can do entirely in Mailchimp. I won't show an example of that today. So like the nonprofit I work with, they create a monthly newsletter. I help them with it. So we construct the newsletter inside of Mailchimp. We put all the content in Mailchimp, just like you would a post in WordPress. So we're building all the content entirely in Mailchimp and then distributing it through a monthly campaign. The example I'll show in the demo tonight is you're building the content in WordPress, a regular blog post in WordPress. You're just using Mailchimp's campaign feature to broadcast that out to your subscribers. So there's a lot of different ways you can categorize a campaign. As Peter said, they could be, and we'll look at this as well, they can be fancy with a lot of formatting, so HTML formatting. They can be automated. You could do manual campaigns or plain text. But the nice thing about a Mailchimp, and this is where I say it's good for non-technical users, you know, people who are comfortable with drag and drop kind of interfaces, is it is pretty simple to build templates with Mailchimp. It'll look sort of Gutenberg-ish when we look at it, but there's less components there. It's not even as complex as Gutenberg. And then you can save these templates, and they have a whole bunch of them there for you. So it's very user-friendly in that sense. Okay, so automated campaigns, as I said, so there's a concept of a campaign. Now, an automated campaign, where this gets really interesting, is you can trigger these based off of an event. So if people have used things like Zapier or if this, then that, these are other automation tools that we'll talk about someday in the future. Mailchimp has some of these built in. So one of the ones that, like I'll show you the demo today, is connecting it for a WordPress event. So when you create a new blog post, that'll trigger a Mailchimp event to go and send out an email campaign. But if you look at some of these other examples on the page here, you can do things that are kind of neat too. Like when somebody first subscribes to your email list, you can trigger an email to them. So this is not really the same as like a drip campaign that Peter talked about. A drip campaign is a little bit more specific, like in a funnel concept. This is just a simple, hey, thank you for signing up for my email. Thank you for, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Happy birthday is a funny one. If you've gotten their birth date or some kind of information, you can send out, send out an automated email campaign for that. Again, you can make these pretty complex. Maybe when somebody's made their third purchase off of you, something like that, you can send out, an email to them. So the automation piece, I think, is another interesting thing of trying to do this yourself or code it or do it in a plugin in WordPress would be quite a hassle. This is kind of built in already into a Mailchimp. The final thing, we won't really talk about, won't look at this too much tonight. As Peter said, I mean, this whole talk could go a couple hours or so. But one of the best things I think about Mailchimp, and what really blows away all the non-technical people I show it to, is the reporting that's built in. You can get really, really detailed on this. So for example, we do this monthly email bulletin out for the nonprofit I work with. They were blown away when I showed them, because I used to send these out, like somebody would cut and paste and send them out in like Gmail 10 at a time. And they're hoping and praying that it gets to their audience. When I first took it over for them, I created an email list for them and said, look, here's how many people opened it. Here's who opened it. Here's who clicked this number of times. They were like, oh, where do you get that information? Again, slightly creepy, but it's you as a marketer or you as a person running this, you can't get this information almost anywhere else. This is Google Analytics. You can do a lot there, but this is really getting into some deep information. And where you want to use this, I think, is truly understanding what works or not. As Peter was saying before, this really is a trust exchange here. You want to understand what you're giving to your subscribers that they engage with. So if you're putting out a lot of content there, no one's opening it, no one's clicking on your links and all that, it's time to take a good hard look and say, am I really providing value to the people subscribing to my list? So, again, use the information for yourself, I think, to make your content more valuable. One other quick last caveat here is be realistic. Even though we say that, yes, there is a high ROI or engagement rate for email marketing, it's still low. Compared to other types of advertising, which fall below 10% or 15%. I mean, think about on Facebook, you have a news feed. So many things are fighting for your attention. You're scrolling past stuff all the time. When we say successful, a lot of cases, you've got to be realistic. It could be 25% of people actually open your emails. That's good. I have to explain that to a lot of clients too, that a 25% is better than the attention you're getting on social media a lot of times. So don't think everyone's going to open your email. Don't take it personally if they don't read everything that you send out. So again, be realistic. All right, Peter, you're up.
Okay, so yet another really big topic that can go into such detail that we'll try to just cover and I think we try to do this with a lot of our presentations where it's all about providing some level of, okay, I've seen this now. Once you're trying to dig a little bit deeper into something, that there's an ability to experiment a little bit because you've got some level of, okay, I see what he did with the forms and building. So while we just can't get into every last level of detail, to be able to show you some of these things. Maybe if anybody has something specific that they definitely want to see, and that quite honestly both Ray and I might figure out at the same time, because again, where our levels of expertise are. And I'll precurse this with, when you build sites for people, you land on a specific toolkit usually, right? So you pick the tools and the plugins that you really like, and you get good at them. The challenge with that is, and what I hope to do here was to show, again, on how you can get started for free, and then realizing in so many cases, a lot of what I wanted to show is a premium feature. So I had to kind of dig through some things and go into areas of unfamiliarity, but I also think that's good because it shows how we find things out. We are not experts because we've studied things to the last level. We just kind of know where to look for things, or look for answers, or look for the clues that say, okay, I know I need to put an API code. And Ray, what is API? I can never remember what API. Do you remember?
Application Program Interface.
Thank you. I just say it so many times that I always get one of those words wrong. But it is the interface between two applications or more that allow that kind of talking and saying, okay, I know I need that. Where do I get it? And then knowing how to either look for it in the tool. So that's sort of a disclaimer at the beginning of this. Next slide for me. So there are many types of forms to gather email addresses, and you can create all kinds of forms. And we talked about how do we get into a level of detail on just creating forms that didn't necessarily have anything to do with gathering email addresses, like a contact form that I think a lot of people could use, and we can certainly show that here, and I will. But there are all kinds of ways that you can use and place forms, and then so what are on those forms? You do have specific to this, a subscription sign up form, a contact us form, which might have things like what are the things you're interested in, what's your message, that type of thing. Content marketing, lead generation, that might get into even another level once you're down a certain part in your process of talking to customers to a deeper level of detail that you might need. Further than that, sales inquiries. I've got customers who they're selling a certain product, and we even include things in the form that are upload the photo of the storefront that you want to work on, that you might need help with, right? Because they build storefronts and things like that. So, being able to say, upload the blueprints or the documents that go with it. Where is the place? What, so you can get into levels of detail on these forms depending on what you need to do with those. And then, surveys are forms, right? So, and multi-steps so all of these things are all these types of forms. But, if we're going to focus on the subscription sign-up form. So, as I mentioned about the, trying to keep it free, form plugins, free, freemium, and premium. So those words, so, something that's straight free, a free plugin, downloading that, 99 out of 100 times out of the repository WordPress.org plugins. Go to WordPress, add a plugin. You'll find your free plugins there. But most of the form plugins use the freemium model, which means you can only do so much with what with what you get for free. And then as soon as you want to take it to the next level, in a lot of cases, adding Mailchimp integration is in fact at that next level, where they might have either buy the add-on to the plugin, or now you're in, buy the premium version. So that word freemium is, you could do a certain amount, in a lot of cases a lot, for free, but then you have to pay for the extra tool. So I was looking at these and kind of, for example, Fluent Forms, which has become a favorite form plugin for me. Forminator, which, and all of these have a freemium. WP Forms, Ninja Forms, Formidable, these are all great. Gravity Forms is a premium only, and probably, it's rated one of the best plugins for most developers, but I think they've slipped a little bit because of things like Fluent Forms. Because Fluent Forms has come up and they sort of leapfrogged them in some areas, and because there are things that you can get for free. They also did a lifetime deal recently, so that kind of built it up. But Gravity Forms is great for developers. Ray, what forms do you use?
I'm using, primarily Fluent Forms now, because I really, I bought that lifetime subscription as well. I've used Constant Contact with it. I've also used like some themes, like Divi actually has an email opt-in module in it. So, for something quick and dirty, it works. But the thing you'll find is, like, those quick and dirty ones built into a theme, you lose some important things. Like, for example, saving your form entries, which now once you lose a form entry, you have someone question it, you'll never go back to using the quick and dirty. So
that's a great point. Sorry to interrupt, but when looking at these, one of the things that is often in the premium version is saving to your database. So, depending on what you're doing, so you're either using the third-party tool like a Mailchimp to do that is a great alternative for that. Looking at the ones that do save to a database, and in fact, in some cases, there are plugins to plugins that will then put in a database. I didn't put here, and I'm kind of curious, does anybody here use Contact Form 7? I am not a fan, so if you do, Judith Ann, do you?
I used to.
Okay.
But you talked about Fluent Forms a few sessions ago, and
Yeah.
I switched, and I'm really happy with them.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I use Contact Form 7 and I don't like it, so I'm glad to know.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's been around for so long. But Contact Form 7 is a great example of you have to get an additional plugin to write your entries to a database. But at least you can do that. But you have it's a lot more work than a lot of these. But Contact Form 7 it works and it does a lot, and there are people who swear by it, but I think just like so many of these things, people swear by the thing that they are super comfortable with.
Right.
You know, and then you use, but yeah, and then things that it does in terms of what it puts on your pages that is unnecessary, and there's a lot of factors with that. But yeah, Fluent Forms is really good.
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So so here are the free ways to integrate Mailchimp into WordPress. So Mailchimp, when you create when you're in Mailchimp and you start building your audience, one of the things you do is you build forms on Mailchimp. So Mailchimp has a section in it where you go in and you say, I want to put the first name, the last name, and maybe we can briefly show that, the email address, maybe some other fields that you want. You have fields that you can bring into, and you create those forms on Mailchimp itself. And what's interesting, if you're a database person, and Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but the form actually is what ends up creating your fields in your database.
In the Mailchimp database.
In Mailchimp.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, I kind of went in there and I thought I was going to see a spreadsheet, you know, years ago, right? And I was going to see a spreadsheet and I was going to put things across the header or what, you know, and at some point you can do some of that. But, you know, at its basic level, it's saying, well, you want to have a form and you want to gather this information. Now we'll create the table behind that. And that makes sense. But when you're coming at it from somebody who's worked on the data tables itself, it was kind of a thing to rethink about that. But you create those forms in Mailchimp, and one of the easiest ways of putting that form on your website is to grab the embed code, and we'll do this, and place it on your site. And this code will draw the form for you that talks to Mailchimp, and everything works. There are, you know, all the styling, and we're not going to have a lot of time to get into, you know, a lot of styling things, but there are, you know, there are compromises with that, and there's the fact that you are, you know, embedding code and the pros and cons of that. But it is a way that works, and it works for free. There is a plugin that I found, I don't know if anyone uses it, called Easy Forms for Mailchimp. It's a free plugin, and it worked very nicely. We'll show that. There is a Jetpack Mailchimp block. I'm not a fan of Jetpack. I don't know, you know, if anyone is. I think it's just, I'm just not a fan, but it is an option. If you are a Jetpack user, there is a built-in block for placing a form that connects to Mailchimp. You have to connect that, but that's one thing that works. Fluent Forms and Forminator, of those I mentioned, the WordPress, the WordPress form plugins, they have built into their free version an ability to connect using the API, using the code. And we'll do that to talk to your database. So that's nice. So you can do that. And then there is one other plugin called Mailchimp for WordPress, MC4WP, and that actually adds the functionality that you would otherwise have to pay for if you like Ninja Forms or WP forms and some other things. It also, interestingly enough, can connect to things like comment forms. Like if you have a blog and you post a comment, and you can have a subscribe to your email list as part of that. This will do that for you and talk to Mailchimp. I don't do a lot with blogs that have comments for that, but that's an interesting option. So let's take a look at some of these. I will, and while we're doing this, I think I wanted to make sure we didn't miss any questions, because before we get too deep, I know there were a couple.
Yeah, so it's in the chat. Mailchimp by Yikes. I've never heard of that one.
That did I not put that on the list? That is one that I meant to put on that I'm actually going to show you, because that was great. Who shared that? Because I agree.
That was Eric.
Yeah, that one was a nice free one, and it works great. And I'll show you that one.
Brian had a question about setting up and managing a list for multiple clients. Do you set up separate accounts for each one, or do you manage a master account? For multiple clients, I'll set up a separate account for each one of them, because you want them separate, because they're going to do their own things. They're going to set up campaigns separately. If it's all inside of, so I'm using mainly for my clients, it's the free accounts for them. If you're working for a larger agency, I guess, that maybe has different departments, that I assume you'd set that up differently.
Yeah, Ray, I do the same thing. They're all set up separately, and I don't know if this has changed recently, because I haven't had to set one up recently, but as the agency, I'm able to connect those to my main account, and then when I log into my Mailchimp account, I can then go into theirs directly, and they're all managed completely separately, which is great. So I have my
just
one
to
login.
give credit, Eric gave me some similar advice too. So thanks.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Eric, you got good stuff going in this chat too. So about the spam, even within, sending campaigns from Mailchimp in general, it is a more trusted source for people's inboxes, but you still want to make sure though that you, even within Mailchimp, there's ways you can set the DMARC record. So this is something where you have to go in and set up on your DNS records just to say your domain is who you say you are. So it gives you a higher level of trust and improves the chances of your Mailchimp emails getting through. Mailchimp's actually very good. Another thing I like about them too is that they are very good with all their help documentation. So a lot of these topics are covered in there. They have lots of tutorials as well too to show you how to do these kind of things. Catchy subject lines. Well, I'll show you that when I'm setting up the automated campaign too. That's a key thing. You want to make sure that even your bulletins, etc., don't look like spam. It's make sure that you put enough interesting stuff in the subject that people are going to open it up.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right,
Eric,
Peter,
you're gonna skip to the next
share,
one.
so I think you can grab.
Yep, I'll share now. Let me grab this one. You see a big zoom right now?
Yep.
Okay, good. So that, look, there's our presentation. Move that aside. Bring this in. Okay, so right now you're just looking at back into WordPress, and here is a Mailchimp dashboard screen. Okay, so when you go to Mailchimp, and this is where I'm literally fumbling in terms of understanding the new format, right? So it used to be the links at the top of the page, and now they've got the added things about managing your audience, the campaigns that you're working on, your automations. I don't know if that's what you're going to be talking about, Ray. Integrations, which is important, but one of the things that you want to do, and we won't get into such great detail, but if you go to once you've signed up for Mailchimp, you get to your dashboard. You start with, and I'm sure it has walkthroughs where it's like, okay, where do you want to start? And create your audience, give it a name, and then say you're creating a sign up form. Under create, there's sign up forms. I have but one audience in this account. I don't actually do email marketing, so this is just for testing. So there's like nobody in there, but I have an Ingersoll Interactive audience that I created, and that's under new audience, right? So, and if I go to creating the form, you have, let me move this off to the side. So we have the different options that happen kind of automatically, which is great, because you can start building on these things. I click new, but this looks like one I have. Ray, have you done a new form lately?
I did. I thought I did it the same way that you did.
Yeah. And did you get, because I just want to make sure and see how, as we're kind of showing you things where it's just like create, sign up form.
Sign up form, yeah. Yep, you're doing an embedded one. Yep, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's assigning it to your audience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's assigning to it. So this must be the default form.
Yeah.
And again, being so used to form builders where I am and being able to put whatever I want on things, I'm looking at it going, I want to, okay, show only required fields, edit.
You might have to do the advanced or
Yeah.
advanced or.
And again, this is the type of thing where when you start, the defaults can be fine, right? Because, and Ray, you'll talk a little bit about this too, in terms of the opt-in and what do you put on a form if you're just building an email list. You know, you don't want to ask a lot of things. You know, you're going to ask for the email and you're going to ask for the first name, or maybe the first name and the last name. The source.
I think what you're seeing are the defaults. So when you created that audience, that's the place where you could add additional fields onto your audience. And then I believe those will then show up in your form when you're setting it up. So this is probably all you have in your audience right now.
I think so, because I added the source field, and the source field is something that I can send over as a hidden field in certain field in a form, and put a field that tells me that, oh, this came from this page or that page or this call to action or so on. So I could put that in a field, but to not overly confuse, this is a simple, it's under classic, the simple form. It brought over the fields from my audience. And right here, if you look under copy paste onto your site, is this big chunk of code. This code is being generated by Mailchimp, and it gives me pretty much, you know, everything I need that from this simple form. So if I take this and if I copy it all, I've copied that to my clipboard, and now I want to create a page and put that form here. I'm going to do a new one. I've already got one, but just say I do a new page. So page new. You know, I'm going to be working in the block editor, and we'll call this embedded form. I might have already called something that. And the block you're going to use for this, or say you do a heading block, right? So please subscribe. And we're not working on design tonight. And then I'm going to add an HTML block. So an HTML block is just where you could put straight code. And in this case, what I'm putting in is the code that I copied over from Mailchimp, right? So form is created in Mailchimp. This code now is going to land on this page. If I view this post, I'm now looking at an unstyled page, but just showing you, and you could put this in a sidebar, you can put it at the bottom of a page, you could put it, you know, where it makes sense for you. And if you're using the classic editor, you would put it in the HTML behind, or it's been a while since I used classic editor for putting embed codes.
You put in the text. Yeah.
Yeah. You just put it in the text on the text side. So instead of the visual editor, you go to the text editor. But the HTML block allows us to just drop this code right in here, and if we go back to this form, it is what's on the Mailchimp form. And the beautiful thing about this is this will work.
And there's no API. The big thing is there's no API keys. You don't.
There's no API
because it's like an iframe. It's embedded inside of this. So that's the benefit of it.
Exactly. So if I wanted to put my email address at, embed it, helpwithwp.com, and I'm just obviously using embed form as the name. In this case, I would hide the form. I would not put the form. I should go back and take the source out, because this would be confusing, because I have it in that form. I should take that out so it's not showing here. And you could use, there's a choice to say, allow the reader to select whether they want to get HTML or plain text. That's in the form. It's actually, right, there's a checkbox here under form options, show format options. If you uncheck that, it will take that out. That gives the reader the option to say, I like HTML or I like plain only. And then if you hit subscribe, a simple thank you for subscribing. It's pretty unadorned here. But now if I go back to Mailchimp, I'm opening another tab here, and I'm looking at my audience. There's my new, and this is not a double opt-in. This is just a straight opt-in. But now you're seeing that WordPress site that I just embedded the form. When I enter it, it connected to Mailchimp and added the email address, the name that I put there. I didn't put anything in the source, and like I said, I should just hide that. And I would use that for, again, a hidden field that says where it came from. The preferred format, that was the checkbox there, and then we don't have any other information. It does tell me that it came from the embed form, so we have that as that source, not my source. It gets a little confusing. I need to take that out. But that was a straight embed. Okay, so that's kind of the most, would you call it the simplest way, Ray?
It is. I mean, one of the other benefits of doing this is if you have a slightly technical person in terms of they can manage, creating forms in Mailchimp, you can separate this from your developers. So again, your high-priced developer, like some of us on this call, can just stick that code in and then be done with it. And then, meanwhile, you can make additional modifications to it on, they can create that first, give the code to the developer and say, here, go stick this on the form. That's a benefit. And the styling of it's actually not bad. Like Peter showed, I think you just showed the simple one, but I've used this before where you can create some pretty slick, pop-ups with fades and all that stuff and do all that animation in Mailchimp. So you don't worry about doing any of that in a plugin. So it's
exactly. This is just the basic. We couldn't get in, you can go into a new form and actually set up a pop-up form with all of those advances. This is kind of like literally, pre-101 to some degree, where it's just like there's a form there, but yeah, you've got other types of layouts. Here's the condensed form, which is literally just the subscribe, give me your email address or subscribe button, and then the unstyled is where you then put in all your own CSS to totally control things. And yeah, there's going to be plugins and some themes and all that are going to give you some control over that. If you use a page builder, you can connect and you can connect your form, and then some of the page builder modules, like under Beaver Builder, probably in Elementor, will give you control, because of course you have a lot of CSS that's happening by the page builder itself. If I go to, I'm going to add a new page, and we'll call this one Yikes. Oops, new page. I'll show you a different version. So now I'm not going to put, and you can put anything in the content here if you're using the block editor, if you're using the generate blocks, which is one of my favorite, layout plugin, block plugins that lets you have a lot of control over the grid of how you columns and rows and things like that. That's generate blocks, which is great. So you could control the size, what's next to things, that type of stuff. But now we'll end up adding. I think it's easy enough just to do. Yeah. So Yikes is actually called Easy Forms for Mailchimp. I do have the plugin loaded and activated. So I'm just going to click on that. We're still in the block editor. And I created something. I have to show you the way these work is on the, so Easy Forms is what it's called. So when this is activated on your menu choice, you'll see Easy Forms. If I click on that, just like most things you'll see in WordPress, it'll be a kind of, rows and columns of the things that you've created. One of the first things you'll need to do is connect. A lot of these things use the API. So here's the example of the API. So if I loaded the Easy Forms plugin, Easy Forms for Mailchimp, when you first get it, it's going to say, hey, you got to connect. So to connect to my account, under my account, and this is one of the things that moved, I had to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You go to account.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to change this afterwards. Then extras. It feels like it should be integrations, but it's
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah.
And under extras is API keys. Now, an API key is the thing that says, okay, you're telling me that I want to talk to that server. I need some way of making sure that I have secure, accurate, and approved connection. And that's what the API key is. So the plugin knows how to use the API key, but the API key is the thing that you're putting in. So when I put in that API key, or when I go to get that, here's my API. I'll delete this afterwards. I can turn that off. But I'm going to copy that API key, or I can create a new one. Say I had a whole bunch of different forms that I want to put different places, and you want to manage your keys so you know that where you're connecting things to, you have a way of turning it off, for example. But if I go into account, the extras, my API key, and now I come back over to the Easy Forms for Mailchimp, that Yikes, that's the company, and I put my key here. You'll see that's the same one. That now tells me that I'm active. At one point it'll say, hey, you're not connected. Now I get the green connected link that says, great, I know how to talk to your very own specific Mailchimp account. This is specific to Easy Forms. And then you need to create a form. And let's see if we can do a new one. So I'll go to create, and the form name will be New Easy. It's a kind of a dumb one. But see, because I've connected the API, it knows as one of my choices, it's going to say, what's the associated list? If I was not connected, I would not have the ability to pick the list that I wanted. Now, if I create a form from here, okay, it's going to go, this particular plugin, the way this one works, and different ones work similarly. It's saying, and if you follow where my cursor is, it's saying, hey, here's what I can use. What do you want to put on the form? And I'm going to say, well, I want to put my, I want to just grab the first name, and then I want to grab the email address. That's what I want to add. Now, if I update that form, I'm saving that new form. So the way form plugins generally work is you create the form in the form plugin interface, and then on your WordPress page, you're then adding that form. It used to be usually through short codes, but now most of the forms will have a block that says, oh, okay, you want to put a Easy Form 1, you put the block there, and I'll show you that right now. It's going to say, great, which one do you want to have? I'm going to refresh this page because I added that new block, and I should now see how I added New Easy?
Mhm.
So when I put the block there, this is that, yikes, this is that particular block when I added it. And if you remember before, I said the easy form block. By now that I have a new easy, I can put it there. And those are the fields that are in that form that I created. I think if I go to the first one I created, it has the first and last name. You can see the different, I have 2 forms saved in the easy form plugin. And you can do this for, the reason you would do this to say you've got your forms plugin and you might ask for different things depending on where you are. Or you might actually, you could use this plugin to also create, like, say, a contact form. But that might be different than what you're going to put on the sidebar that says, would you like to subscribe? Give me your first name and your email address. So I'm going to say, go ahead.
If I get just more in general, and you're probably
Please.
touched upon these too. So, you know, just look at the other options that you're getting on the side that you didn't get from the Mailchimp thing. So, for example, reCAPTCHA. You know, so you have the ability to add a spam reCAPTCHA to your form. As Peter was saying, I'm not sure if this one does it, but a lot of them you also have the ability to do a redirect after. So after they signed up, you can display a message, you can redirect them to a thank you page, do things like that, or continue on to somewhere else. So yeah, the forms are giving you just a lot more control besides what you get from the simple Mailchimp embed.
Exactly, and that's where, like, Gravity Forms and Fluent Forms, you get into conditional logic. If they click this on a form, then show them that. That whole idea that says what happens, like right now at the very, you know, out of the box, most of these forms will say, thanks for subscribing, or, you know, thanks for contacting us, because I haven't even changed that message in the same page, as opposed to, you know, the options that would say, once they hit submit, go to my thank you page, or go to the page where you're going to download the thing I told you I was going to give you. So there's the power behind the forms is really great. Now, if I view that page, now this is the form, and you can see it carries over some of the formatting of the basic out of the box Cadence theme, right? So the button is blue and, you know, the gray backgrounds and things like that. But that is a way, and most of the form plugins work the same way, where you create a form. Well, first you get the form plugin, you go to its settings, where you then make sure that you are adding your API, and then you can use it. You can create a form that can connect to Mailchimp, and save your data out to the Mailchimp form. Obviously, we don't have time to show you, you know, the way Fluent Forms works, Ninja Forms, but one thing I'll show you really quickly is this MC4WP is the plugin where all you do basically, and it's very basic, is you put in that API key, that same thing that I put into the Easy Forms one. But this plugin kind of knows how to talk to other things, other plugins or tools. And here's the list under. When I activate this plugin, I get this choice in my admin, this MC4WP, and under integrations, I'm going to get, you know, I loaded Ninja Forms, and it's active, and it's saying, oh, great, I could talk to Ninja Forms, I could talk to WP Forms, and there'll be certain things like you can actually make the registration form or the comment form, which are built into WordPress, active, to also save out to Mailchimp. And there's other things, you know, if you have, you know, MemberPress, affiliate, all these different things give, and it has its own Gravity Forms thing. Gravity Forms charges if you have, you know, I don't think that they charge separately now, so I'm not sure how much that necessary. But anyway, tangent. But this plugin made these two, the Ninja Forms and the WP Forms, which are nice form plugins, work with Mailchimp that they didn't work without paying a premium price for without this plugin. So that was a nice bonus to find that. And then last thing is, you know, Fluent Forms is an example of one where out of the box for free, now I've got Fluent Forms active, and under its integration choice, you'll see, you know, Mailchimp is part of the free. You know, if you wanted to go to Stripe or, you know, advanced post, whatever these are, you have to upgrade. But what's nice is Mailchimp is free, and then the settings are pretty much the same type of thing, where you would put in the API. I already activated, so I have to deactivate it to see where I would put it in again. But now that makes Fluent Forms work, and I'll show you one thing, and then Ray, I got to give you time. I know I'm eating into your time here, but under Fluent Forms, here's the Fluent Form example. Same type of thing. There's a simple block. I tell it in this Fluent Form block. I've got something called Mailchimp subscription. If I go to this document, that was the form that I created in Fluent Forms. I didn't show you that process, but it's the same type of thing where you make the form in the Fluent Forms section very quickly. Same type of thing.
And that's also, again, the benefit of using, let's say you use the same form builder for building your contact form, your other forms. Once you get good at
Yes.
a form builder, you want to use that for everything that looks like a form. So
Yeah.
it's an efficiency thing too, rather than going off the Mailchimp and you're like, how do I work this? Yeah, I find it's, once you get familiar with one form builder, you're like, I want to use this everywhere because it's, you get good at it.
Yeah, and you would never have Fluent Forms, Ninja Forms, WP Forms, and Forminator and Easy Forms active on the same site.
I hope not.
You would not do that. But here is, similarly, your form is sitting here. What's really nice about the Fluent Forms is that it has this very nice drag and drop kind of interface, where you can put your check boxes. You could just grab things. If you're a content Form 7 person, this looks very attractive to you because it's so much easier. But this was the form that is now showing up on that page that I created over here. So first name, last name, email, subject, message. But it could also write to that form will also write to, and you would typically put in a would you like to subscribe to make sure that the people are saying yes, I would like to subscribe. Ray, I aided you some of your time. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Mine will be quick. So let me, can I grab it back, Peter?
Yeah. Yep.
Let me just grab, oops,
Yeah.
I won't do that. Ooh.
You got it?
I almost ended the meeting for all. I don't want to do that.
Well, I'm sure I made a few people go.
That's right. All right. So as I said, so that hopefully that made sense to people. There's a lot of ways to build the sign up form on WordPress. And in fact, that's the simple part. There's a lot of things you can do. I don't want to simplify. I mean, there's a lot you can go into. Like even those API keys. Just another quick thing on that. Where I've created multiple API keys is if I'm testing something. So I have my test version of the site before I launch it. I'll have a test API key, make sure it works good. Then it's very easy to clean that up, get rid of all the data, and then create a prod or live API key. So even API keys, there's more to talk about with that. But what I'm going to show kind of quickly, because again, this can go a lot of different ways too, is there's many things you can do in Mailchimp from a campaign standpoint. If you recall, what I'm going to show probably of most relevance to people from a WordPress standpoint is connecting WordPress to Mailchimp for an automated campaign. So an automated campaign doesn't really look in many ways that different from the other types of campaigns. So what I show you here, even though I'm not showing you like how to create a dedicated newsletter in Mailchimp, they're very similar. It's just obviously not connecting to WordPress. So, as I said, I'm also, my account has like one subscriber, me, one or two. I keep dummy stuff in here just to play around with. But again, so you'd have your audience already built beforehand. And what you would do is, you'd start off I think Peter started to do this as well, create a campaign. So I'm going to create a new campaign here. And one of your choices is, so it's going to be an email campaign. So I think Peter had you did a regular one. So what I want to select instead is automated. And as you can see, one of the choices you have here is sharing blog updates. So this is the way that we're going to connect a blog to a campaign. So you can call it whatever you want. So I'll call it the share blog updates. Here's where you pick your audience. So I've already created my audience, the audience of one. And then begin. So the important thing, the first thing is connecting it to a blog. And that's where I warned Sherry and Tad ahead of time, because my blog is nothing of interest. Don't subscribe to my blog, because again, do as I say, not as I do. But theirs is a wonderful blog with lots of great images, etc. So one of the first things you need to do is get your RSS feed. So for people who remember websites not that long ago, a lot of people, there are a lot of blogs used to be out there, and that was one of the main things people read and subscribed to. And the way that you used to do that was you had an RSS reader. So RSS stands for really simple syndication. So your blog itself, whether you know it or not, behind the scenes really has, unless you've turned it off, has a feed. And a feed is this. It just looks like all the data in your blog in an XML format. So it's like an HTML kind of format, but it's structured data. So the way that you verify this feed and that exists is, put your website name /feed, and it'll pull in your blog posts and a lot of information here that may not be of interest to you. You don't have a lot of control, so let me talk about this for a second. You don't have a lot of control over, I should say, by default from WordPress, you don't have a lot of control over how this data gets formed. But one thing you can do is in WordPress on the back end under reading, this is where, if you change full text or summary, that does affect the amount of data that comes into this feed. So if I had full text, then, Sherry and Tad's blog I'm looking at would have the full articles, the full actual blog articles. So, if you're broadcasting your blog through Mailchimp, there's two schools of thought. One is you put the entire blog article in the Mailchimp email so people can read it all there. The other school of thought, of which I'm a subscriber, is you want to give them a teaser. You want to give them enough information. I don't know if Steve is still on here or not, Steve Sherman, but Steve has a great blog where he has a great, an image, photography image that he talks about the story behind that photograph. And you'll see the image, Steve will put a little bit of summary text in there, and you're like, I want to read more about that. And you'll get the summary and then go to his website. And for most bloggers, that's what you want to do. You want to give a teaser of it from a summary and then drive the traffic to your site. One other quick thing just to mention it here is, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, by default, WordPress does not actually give you the featured image in the RSS summary. This drives people nuts because they'll pull this stuff in, they'll look at it like, where did my beautiful featured image go? So if you remember, Sherry and Tad, for some of these, they've got this great image of garlic, et cetera, et cetera. What you've got to do, there's a couple of ways to do this, but quite honestly, the simplest, and I'll give a link to this in the resources, is there's a plugin, just like there is for everything, called Featured Images in RSS.
Yeah.
As soon as you install this, like magic, suddenly your featured images appear in your feed. So let me just show, I don't think we'll see it on theirs because they obviously don't have that plugin installed. But in here, you'll start to see a little section that shows like that image that corresponds to the featured image. So if you don't have this, the drawback is when you're creating your Mailchimp email, you'll miss that image, so it'll just be text. So again, back to, you want your emails to look appealing enough or inviting enough that people will open them and read them. So one way to do that is by including a featured image, install that plugin. So anyway, let's go back to, so in Mailchimp, so you need to put the URL in here. And this is kind of funny, like, I'm going to use Sherry and Tad's blog as my trigger for Mailchimp because it doesn't care. I don't have to own this, which is a little bit weird, but because that's the way RSS works. RSS by default is it's broadcasting out that people can read it. It's sort of like if you subscribe to podcasts, it's the same thing. So I'm just for test purposes, I'm going to use their blog for my email campaign. So here's one of the first things. I won't go into all these different, some of these are very self-explanatory, but you can set up your frequency, like how often do you want to trigger this from Mailchimp. Obviously, as we said earlier, don't spam people. So, but it depends how much output you're putting on your blog. I mean, once a month or every couple of weeks, I would say is probably a good rule of thumb. And the way it works is when it triggers, once it goes once, the next time it triggers, it'll only pick up anything that's changed in between those time periods. So you're not always sending, the same 50 blog posts over and over again. So anyway, so let's say in this case, we're going to say, hey, I only want to send this, every month on the 3rd of the month at 4 a.m. Now, here's where your analytics, just to bring that back in for a second, this is where things are interesting. Once you start sending these out, you may want to adjust your schedule and see when do you get the most opens. When do people actually open these things? And it really depends on your blog post. Some people read their email, Monday mornings or whatever, or in the afternoon. So depending on what you're sending out, you can increase your open rate just by adjusting the time that you send out your blog post. So that could be something, again, over time, look at those insights and move things around a bit. Let's say resize images. This is another one too that, because remember, people are going to be reading these things, not necessarily on a desktop. They may be reading things on a phone, most likely. So Mailchimp will help take care of that. It'll help try to resize things as much as it can into your template. So again, this was the first step, was just connecting it to an RSS feed. I'll go through some of these other steps kind of quickly so we can leave more time for questions. In this case, I'm going to send it to everybody on my list, but I could have segmented it. Remember I talked about segments earlier. And so here we go. So the blog name is just, I'm going to call it as my own internal thing. Here's where things get, again, there's the art versus science piece. You want to have a subject that, again, is interesting enough for people that they'll be tempted to, to open up your email. So having something that says posts from blah, 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 probably not. But let's say, again, it's the Diary of a Madman, I don't know, Madman's posts for, something catchy. But, again, you want to also make sure that you're not misleading. You don't want to be too spammy, because that may also, trigger things to fall into a spam folder.
Right.
And these things I won't talk about real quick, but these are tags. These are mail merge tags from Mailchimp. I'll send a link to these as well too. So you have the ability from your RSS feed to pull bits of your RSS feed into Mailchimp. So if we look at Cherry and Tads, for example, all these different things like title, etc., all that WordPress data you have access to inside of Mailchimp through RSS. So this is where you can get creative. You can say blog post from this date, this subject, etc., etc., and construct something that makes sense. All right, so let me just, so again, I won't go into all this stuff, but yeah, you definitely want to keep tracking on. Personalizing the to field, I found, is another thing that usually helps encourage people open things up. So I'll grab this Mailchimp tag and say, so in this case, for my subscriber list, my audience, it's going to take my first name and last name if I have it. And it's, when it sends out the email, it'll say to Ray Michno as opposed to just nobody, So if people see something, they think it's more personal, they're more likely to open it. You can put in preview text. I won't play around with some of these things, from email address. Another cool thing here is you can also use Mailchimp to post this to social media too. I would say this is probably more of a quick and dirty kind of thing. You lose a little bit of control because you're kind of passing through Mailchimp to go to Facebook. But if you don't want to set up too many other integrations elsewhere, this is dirt simple to do, meaning you've got to connect it to your Facebook account. And then once you do that, once you post to Mailchimp, it'll also take your Mailchimp template and then post that to your social media accounts. So as far as I know, you can just do Twitter and Facebook right now, at least with the free version. And then if you have any videos, you can also auto convert them to, just again, so that they play properly with an email. So I'm going through this kind of fast, but some of these things, like I said, it's very self-explanatory. I think a lot of good tutorials built into Mailchimp on how to do this. Now, here's where we talk about the formatting of what you can do inside of Mailchimp. So this is a template I'm going to use in Mailchimp. So they have some for you already that are pretty nice. You can use them to sell products, do this, etc. But for this case we're talking about here of taking a blog post, we'll just use the basic plain vanilla template. So the way this template builder works is I already have uploaded my logo into Mailchimp. So by default, it's trying to use that as my header of my emails. And then it's just sticking in some boilerplate text in here. But because what I want to really do is I want to take my latest blog post and I want to send that out, through Mailchimp. So what I want to do is I'll delete this. Yeah, delete this block. I'll keep my logo just for kicks. But here you can see I have these two items in my template builder. I have the RSS header and then the RSS items. So RSS header, if you'll recall, think about that as your page title, your blog post title. That's kind of the metadata of a post. The other stuff, the other piece, the RSS items, that's the actual post itself. So let me just drag the header in here first into the body. So as soon as I drop it in, by default, it's going to display the RSS feed description. The good things I'll show you a little bit later. You can always preview and see what this looks like. So some of these tags at first are probably not very intuitive, but as you play around with them or you look for examples of them, you'll set this up once. You don't have to do this every time. The nice thing is once you set up this template and you automate it, whatever your schedule is, your frequency, it's going to use this template to format your blog posts. So we'll stick with basic for now, and let me go back to content. So now what I want to do is I also, in the body, I want to put the actual blog post itself. So by default, it's putting in these, it looks a little bit gibberishy here, but this is, like I said, these are the merge tags that I showed earlier. So what it's doing is it's taking the title of the post, it's taking the content of the post, and then the read on button. So, if someone wants to read more, they can click on this. But you can get fancier too. As I said, the read on button, you could, let me see, if I want to do full content, custom content, etc. And I can still use these other widgets from Mailchimp. So for example, let's say I want to add another button here for whatever reason. Let's say, let's say this button is the one that you want to say, visit my blog or something. I don't know. And you put in the actual blog address in here. So I'll put in gardeningwithmadmen.com. So this is just another way to get people to go to your site besides using that pre-formatted RSS tag. So let's take a quick look at this. And I know we're kind of running out of time here. If I go to preview mode. So in preview mode, what it should do, if all went well, is it's going to pull in that information from Sherry and Tad's blog. So as I said, they don't have that plugin turned on, that featured image plugin. But if they did, what we'd see here is we'd actually see, the image for their last blog post in here, as well as the last couple of posts. So again, this is showing the last 3 because we've never set it up before. But once this thing gets going, it'll just take, between the last time it got triggered to this latest time, it'll take the latest blog posts from that. And the cool thing, again, it styles it for you. You can see what's it going to look like on desktop, what's it going to look like in a person's inbox. So when they see your preview of the text, what's that going to look like? Oh, I'm sorry, this you have to pay for. that's the gotcha. There's a lot of little things here. It's like, oh, by the way, you've got to pay for that.
Yeah.
Let me see, it's preview test. Okay, and then just to finish it off now. So again, a lot more styling you can do. There's things you want to play around with to really make it look the way you want it to look. And then when you're done, it's as simple as go through one last step in here. You have one final chance to review all your settings. So here we go. So right now it's set up to send monthly 4 a.m. from this feed. Here's my audience. I can still go in here and change it around. Here's what the subject's going to look like. Here's who the replies will go back to. It'll go back to me. We want tracking turned on. And then once we're done, you click the start button. Sherry and Tad, I'll turn this off once we're done here. So I'm not sending out your blog. But here, that's it. It's turned on. So now it's waiting. So on November 4th, if I had left this alone, it's automatically going to trigger. It's going to look at their blog, at their RSS feed and say, has there been anything new posted? If so, it'll send it out in an email to my audience list. So again, the nice thing you saw, I didn't have to put any code on the WordPress site to do this.
Right.
But I needed, back to why did Peter and I do this presentation together? You needed the audience part first. You need to get the signups. You need a blog. You need all those things in place. But once you have that, now on the WordPress side of things, you're not touching the site anymore. You're doing all your templates inside of Mailchimp.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so you're showing an automated one. The ones that I will send out are not using any automation and are custom for each email that's going out. So that's another way of doing it, where you just basically go and create and say, here's what I want to say. This is what we're promoting. This is, so it builds the same way, but you're not using the RSS feed. You're using just the straight, I want to send a new campaign out and I'm going to create it, from scratch, or maybe copy a previous template you've done or so on. So
Exactly. And we don't have time to show that, but the templates thing, this is the other powerful piece too. Just sort of like, if you think of those templates almost as like a mini page builder, once you build one and you have a nice format, like for the nonprofit I work with, where we're sending out a monthly bulletin, we set up the template once. Every month we replicate the previous month's bulletin and we just swap out the content. We'll swap out the images, but I don't have to worry about changing the header, the format, any of that kind of stuff for them. It's just copy the previous template, reuse it, and then it's the individual content that switches. So
do the same thing, yeah. Yep.
All right. We went through a lot today, and I know there's some bloggers on here and other people that I know people are doing this different ways too. I see Steve's still on, and Sherry and Tad. So again, you don't have to switch over to this. If you have a method that works for you, certainly stick with it. But again, I think the value of Mailchimp that I see is also, and we didn't have time to look at this, is the analytics piece of it. When somebody opens these things up, then all of a sudden you get all this rich information about what they're doing and all that, which I think it's a nice cycle of, it helps you understand your audience, what content they're engaging with, and hopefully you produce more of it, to drive engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from folks? I know we went through a lot, and see if anything added into the chat. Any questions on the Mailchimp side? Steve, where are share again where the merge tags are located? Yeah, I'll send a link out to that, Steve, afterwards. There's a help article from Mailchimp on that.
Yeah.
Can you send a tester email using the free version? Yes, you can. Yes, I always do.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing too. Send yourself a test.
Absolutely.
Because you never know what things are going to look like. Yeah, and usually, especially in the beginning, you're going to go back and forth several times to make sure that things look okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Just as an FYI, those tests that you send out, they're extremely low resolution and not very high in clarity. So don't be alarmed. That it just must be some component of how Mailchimp does it. But
you mean for the images, like for your images you're talking about?
no, I mean for the test that you would send to yourself.
Yeah.
It's a pretty low grade looking image as you create it, but once it comes through your email for your own test, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah, what you'll see in email is what everybody else will see. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But what you generate on your screen before you hit the directive to send the email is pretty lousy looking.
Yeah.
And that's when it's pulling that image from your blog, you mean? Or like
no, it's the test that you direct Mailchimp to send to yourself before it goes through to your email. What you see in the Mailchimp,
preview screen.
design
Yeah.
is pretty lousy looking.
Yeah, you're right. So that's
why
why
the email fine.
you're right. You want to send it out to yourself and take a look, and especially look at it in different devices too. I think that's the thing where when I was first working with this group, they're putting like these really dark text things together, and I said, that doesn't really look good in a mobile device. They finally looked at it and said, oh, you're right. Don't assume everyone has a desktop like you do.
And I had mentioned at the beginning about, be careful about over designing things if your audience is not one who is going to be receptive to over designed emails. So like if you use tons of images and formatting and all, and they're filtering everything to be plain text, like an industrial customer I have, we've got to keep it pretty simple. Somebody else who is, subscribing, and specific to like, hey, I want to see those images and I'm getting HTML through my Gmail and all, then it's fine. But it's kind of knowing who's got what. There was a question about spam. Is that still, did we address that at all? I know things.
A little bit from like a reCAPTCHA standpoint. So we talked about at least, back to the form standpoint, I would say reCAPTCHA is, and that's probably a separate discussion we could talk about at some point, how to set that up. So that's just preventing spammers from signing up. That's
right. to not be spam is to use a good service.
Yeah.
So, again, Mailchimp keeps track. There are not good services to use out there, and it is the messaging that if you put in your subject line, free offer, get top of Google, tomorrow kind of stuff, that could get, it's a lot. The messaging, if you're sending a spam message, you're going to land in the spam folder.
Right.
So that's
and I've seen funny ones too, where again, this group that I support, I'm part of them too, is this Polish Genealogy Society. Sometimes foreign words, like
oh sure,
we'll have like Polish words or Russian words in there. Whoop, they'll immediately send things to spam, and I have to tell them, yeah, don't do that.
yeah, exactly. So there are libraries of words to look out for.
But one last thing, just sort of back to the bloggers on here is, and I know Steve, you do this very well with yours, and if any other bloggers on here, when you have a blog, you have a lot of content to share, and unfortunately, not a lot of people will remember to go to your blog every month and look at things. That's where this is so powerful for bloggers, and whether it's Mailchimp or whatever it is, just remind people that you're still blogging. Share your content with them. So setting up that automated thing, and then connecting it to all your other social media platforms too. It's, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, you want to format things a little bit differently for Facebook versus whatever. There's other tools that can do this as well too, but this is a pretty simple thing to set up and reuse your content and grow your audience. So so hopefully some of these, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do this too. And I know sometimes that gets overwhelming with anything in WordPress, but start simple. I mean, if nothing else, start with that form that Peter showed. I mean, it's pretty basic to build it in Mailchimp, copy and paste the code into, a short code or text field, whatever you're using on your WordPress site. And immediately you get the benefit of getting a form. I think you'll quickly go away from that though, once you see like all the other benefits you get from a form builder.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's a good place to start.
One last thing too, I saw Bill's on here too. The other bit of this too, we didn't talk about this as well, is connecting this to Google Analytics too. So if you're monitoring your website and all that, think of your newsletter as it's another channel of traffic driving to your website. So if you're working with clients or just yourself, that's another piece you want to throw into your overall reporting too, to say how many people are coming to your site via your newsletter, or to whatever place you're driving them to on the site. So in Google Analytics, I believe, I'm not sure if it's by default, Bill, or not, but it shows up as a campaign, I believe. Or if you may have to set it up properly in Mailchimp or connect the two together, but that's where you'll see it in Google Analytics as one of those campaigns coming into your site. So make sure you're measuring that as well.
Yeah, best practice would be to add parameters to your links so that you can pull those in and then parse that information out, campaign, date, all that stuff.
All right. Any other questions from folks? I know we covered a lot. As I said, we will send out the recording, the link to it probably tomorrow, along with the slides and any resources. Any questions afterwards too, as always, feel free to post them to the Facebook group. And like I said, we're always looking for additional topics and things maybe we didn't cover, even like little things like reCAPTCHA. I mean, it's probably not worth the whole presentation in its own, but we can easily show people how to set that up and some best practices around that in a future meeting if folks are interested.
Hey, Ray, it's Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Thanks again for great session. I was just playing around doing my multitasking and inside my Mailchimp, and I can't find those buttons for the RSS feed and stuff. Is that a paid feature, or am I looking in the wrong place?
You're trying to set up an automated campaign. It's when you create automated campaign, your campaign type email, and then there you'll see automated as one.
So I got to do automated first. All right, that's what I'm missing. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, folks, again for joining. Hope you learned a bit if you're using Mailchimp already. If not, try it out. The price is good.
Price is right.
Until you run into 2,000 people, and then
experiment.
Make sure you actually have 2,000 people. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Until we talk again, everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Thank you
Chris.
so much. God
Bye,
bless.
everyone.